Cool. Okay, so we are going to talk about the Cohesive Rider course. So first, I want to thank you guys for taking the time to take some time out of your day to come and join me for this little webinar. It shouldn't take very long. Hopefully, I won't take up too much of your time, but I'll hopefully answer all the questions there are out there. And then you're also invited to anytime ask any questions by email or give me a call if you have more questions. So the Cohesive Rider course is a course that I built to try to attempt to get out why we do what exercises when and how to do them so that we can develop the equine athlete. And so this course has been years in the works, and it was first offered at the beginning of this year, so in the winter of this year. And we had the first cohort of students take the course, and they gave me a lot of feedback. And so from that feedback, I've now updated the course. So it's actually four weeks longer than it originally was. And we've added a lot of different materials to it. So it continues to evolve. And I think it's a really, really good course on how to do what exercises, when, and why do we do them. And I think that's really important for all of us to understand why we do what with our horses. So let's see if it'll let me advance here. So a little bit about myself. So I'm Tessa. I blend my experiences working on ranches, starting horses. I grew up in the pony club in Europe. And then I had some awesome opportunities to learn from a lady that did French classical dressage. At the time, I had no idea what it was. I was just a kid, but it was fun. And now I realize what it was looking back on it. And since then, I've gone back into French classical dressage, and I really find it to be such a gift to build that light athletic horse. And then I continue to learn every day when I work with a horse or a mule. I feel like they're teaching me something more. So that's a little bit about me. If you want to know more about me, there's some information on the website, and we can go into more details if you'd like at some point. But really what I want to talk about is this Cohesive Rider course. So this is the dressage training scale, and this has been part of dressage training for a long, long time. And so you'll see at the bottom is rhythm, and then it goes into suppleness, and then connection, impulsion, straightness, and collection. And generally speaking, this is the steps that you want to take to develop that horse towards, really, our main goal is to get towards self-carriage and to have that horse that can really put a lot more weight on their hind and have that strength to have that collection piece. And really, I try to think about collection as the ability to be prepared for any kind of movement. So it's a state of preparedness, if you will. Now, the thing about this scale is it looks relatively linear as you look at it here, but you're always moving back and forth between these. So for instance, if you've got rhythm, so let's say you can maintain gait, and now you're starting to work on some suppling exercises so you can get your horse a little bit flexible and they can start to shift their weight and move around. And then you start to add connection. So you start to feel them a little bit more. They can feel their aids, etc., your aids, etc. Once you get to connection, a lot of times your rhythm goes away. You get poor rhythm. Suddenly your horse gets stiff. So you have to go back and work on rhythm again and work on suppling and then go back to connection. And then you can start adding impulsion. And when you start adding impulsion, you find that you have to go back and work on rhythm because your tempo has changed, right? So you're always going back and forth between these. It's not just a check mark that you put out there and say, yes, I've got rhythm and I move forth. So we go back and forth. And then one thing about looking at this awesome scale is, so my question years ago was, so how do I work on rhythm? What are some exercises to help supple my horse? How do I introduce connection to my horse in a way that they're going to understand it? And then what are exercises that build impulsion? And how do I work on straightness? How do I even know I have a straight horse? What is straightness, really? And, so all of these questions come into mind. So this course is meant to walk us through this and tell us why we're going to do certain exercises when and how we're going to do them. So that's my main goal for this course. So what that looks like is we start from a place where we have really good foundations. So this is where we build relaxation, we work on balance, and we work on willingness. These core pieces are what I call the Cohesive Foundation course. So there is a 10-week course that just focuses on this part. So this is really building that foundation. And then from this foundation, we can then start to add the suppleness, the mobility, so the ability of the horse to change their weight and go in different directions and bend their body in different places. And then collection, so the ability for collection. And again, this is not a one and done place that you land. It's a continuous journey, and you're going to work on collection, and you're going to work on straightness, and you're going to work on mobility and suppleness throughout your journey with your horse at different degrees, right? Your degree of collection is going to increase as you start working on some of these exercises, and then it'll start increasing even more and more and more. So you're always working towards that collection, but it's ever evolving, right? It's not a landing spot. So that's the focus of the Cohesive Rider course. And this is what it kind of looks like. And this is overwhelming, so I don't want you guys to look at this and run away. But I wanted to show that all of these different words on the side of this circle are basically exercises and movements that build that suppleness, that build that mobility, that build that collection. And so when we start talking about shoulders in and how can we use shoulders in to get a better haunches out, these kind of exercises that go back and forth is what the course really tries to get at, and then when to do what and how to do them. So do you first teach haunches out or do you first teach shoulders in? Those kind of questions are what the course tries to get at. So we start by looking at asymmetries. So we all have these, even in ourselves as humans, right? I'm right-handed, for instance, and so I tend to ride my horse with my right shoulder forward if I'm not paying attention. So I have to really work on getting my right shoulder back and making sure that I stay on both seat bones and keep myself nice and even. So we first look at asymmetries. And the course teaches you how you can look at your horse and feel for your horse when you're riding and understand where they're stronger and where they might be weaker. And then from there, we then build a program, basically a training plan that will help them address those needs. And we start from the beginning and we work up into the more advanced exercises to get to that. So that's how we start, is looking at asymmetries, and then this can help us work through that training scale and all the exercises that go with that. Then we start talking a lot about the thoracic sling. So this is that whole muscle group that is at the front of your horse. So this is the chest of your horse. This is the shoulders of your horse. It's the pec muscles. It's the beginning of the abdominal muscles. And this becomes really important in how we can ask the horse to be strong through that part of their body so that they can lift the withers and put more weight towards the hind. So this becomes a really important part of the course. And we talk a lot about different exercises that can help us lift the thoracic sling and build these muscles. This is a really important part of the horse, and it's a place that in my mind sometimes gets missed. So if you can have a horse that looks collected in the sense that its head's going to be in a certain shape and it's going to be moving forward relatively nicely, but they can still be dropped or weak in the thoracic sling. And that causes a lot of pressure in the hocks. It causes a lot of problems in the hind of the horse. So in other words, your horse might look kind of collected, but not actually be using their thoracic sling to lift the withers and be tall in the withers. And that can cause some lameness issues later on. in the horse. So we try to really make sure that we understand how we can lift the thoracic sling, what does it feel like when it's lifted, and how we can build that structure and those muscles for the horse to really be in that position over time. And then we talk about the carrying capacity of the hind. So how do we build the muscle groups in the hind legs to help the horse be able to lift themselves and carry their weight on the hind? So what exercises, for instance, would work? In this case, we're looking at the haunches out left. So the horse is bent, curved to the left. That left hind, so that the red arrow there is going to be holding a lot of weight. So that's going to muscle that hind. While the right hind, so the blue arrows, is going to have to push as the horse moves and then stretch and reach under. So that's going to add a lot of flexibility and stability to that hind. So depending on what your horse is presenting, maybe they have some weak stifles or maybe they have a little bit of weak hocks, you can use these different exercises to build these different muscles and create a horse that's nice and strong in the hind. So we talk about that in the course. And then every exercise and movement is explained in different ways. So you'll have some diagrams to look at to try to understand what the movement is supposed to look like. Then you'll have some diagrams trying to demonstrate how the exercise comes together and flow. You'll have some pictures to show what that might look like and what aids you would be using for those different exercises. And then you'll have videos of how to do it and then feedback on anything that you ask within the course. So my goal for this course is that you walk away with a really good understanding of what these exercises are and then how to use them to develop any horse or mule that you might work with in the future to be that awesome athlete that you want. So this is what the course looks like. So each week we go through a different lesson, and these are all 10 weeks. So we start with finding asymmetries and we make a plan. Then we talk about some connection with the reins and then lesson of the leg. So forward, basically. We talk about quality gaits. What are those? How can we tell if our horse has quality gaits and how can we help them get quality gaits? How can we build a supple seat and a supple horse? So notice here it says supple seat. That's us, right? That's the human. So we are going to have exercises that address the human as well as the horse. And then we're going to talk about straightness. What is it? Why is it important? And how can we feel it? And then how do we address it? And then we start building the hind. We start building those muscles in the hind with first shoulders in. And then we talk about travers and renvers, which are basically haunches in and haunches out. We talk about half pass and leg yield to some extent. Then we talk about turn on the haunches versus pirouettes. And this becomes important for the Western horse. So Western horses that are working cattle, that are doing those kind of work, we want to be able to distinguish between where we want to pivot on a hind and when we want to do a pirouette where we don't pivot on one of the hind. So those are things that we're going to talk about. And then we start really building balance to the hind. We add some suspension and some jump to our gaits, and then we bring it all together at the end. I think it's important as we learn, that we are able to read things, that we can listen to it so we can hear it, then we can see it through videos, through examples. We can discuss it together through the coaching calls. And then if you wanted to take notes, you can write it, not ride as in riding your horse, but write it like taking notes. And then try it. And this is where you actually ride it with a D, right? So this is where you would ride your horse and try these exercises and get feedback on what you're experiencing. And then through every week, there's also some exercises for the human. So you will be working a little bit on hip flexibility, on building some of that strength through your core to be able to be that rider that can then ride these kind of movements. So I wanted to show you what that would look like. So I'm going to see if it'll let me get to my computer here and show you a little bit, if I can move this, here we go, what that might look like. So this is what the learning network looks like as a student. And so I wanted to show you a little bit of what that might seem like. So this would be your lesson. This would be your link to listen to the lesson. So you can listen to me reading it to you. And a lot of times I add different things as I start talking about these things. You can then read it. You'll have some diagrams of what that looks like. You'll have some pictures as some examples. Then we'll talk about the aids. We'll talk about what you feel or should feel, some of the common challenges, and then why do we even do that exercise? And then how do we teach it, right? So how do we teach it to our horse? How do we teach it to ourselves? And then you'll have videos of me teaching horses, teaching people, and doing these exercises. So the exercises are, or the videos, I should say, you'll always have one video of a horse that's beginning these exercises, and then as they advance through these exercises, and then as we refine them. So there's 3 different levels. So no matter where you're at, you can start thinking about what that might look like. And then you have the option to download a PDF of the entire lesson so you can read it and have a little workbook that you can make for yourself. And then you can look at exercises for that week that are then brought up. And then there's also the exercises for the human. So in this case, for this week, we work on an exercise ball and we look at how we can do shoulders in on an exercise ball to teach us how to do it. So we have those, and then we also have the ability, and I'm going to have to move this right here, within each week and each course, whenever you want, you have the ability to have some course discussions. So this is an example from the past course. So you have all of these posts from people who have taken the course and who are working through things and are getting help as they go along. You have the ability to journal or to chat with each other about the course as you go along. So this is where you can post some videos and I'll give you feedback, etc. Then all your coaching calls are listed up here in the coaching calls, and then you can see all the other students in the class and you can chat with one another if you'd like. So that is how the learning portal or the online portion of the course is set up. So I think with that, I'm going to take some questions if anybody has any. Before I do that, I'm just going to say that the first coaching call for this course is September 11th. Every call is going to be at noon Arizona time, which is going to get confusing when the rest of the world changes time, but we'll work through it and make it happen. And then the course takes place over 10 weeks. But you have lifetime access to all the course materials and any of the updates that I make over time. So any of your feedback from the course will then go into the next course and I make the update and you have access to any of that. And then the cost for the 10-week course is $547. So with that,